You telling me that the shield blocked out a fucking explosion of that caliber? And the man who set off the explosion is walking away unscathed when he was at the center of it? Who is writing this shit? Why does every fight disobey the rules of reality and the show? One of my greatest challenges while writing this is undoubtedly trying to not analyze this work from an unfair perspective. Not every anime has to be particularly meaningful or deep, so to hold this show to such a standard is a little bit unfair. But Akame Got Killed has a problem. This anime has an issue where it's begging me to take it serious, but also is punishing me anytime I look at it as anything other than shonen fat bait. I'm just entirely convinced at this point that you can make an anime with boobs or swords, or even better, boobs and swords, and it becomes a smash hit. Otherwise, no niggas should be compelled to even watch this show. There's no chance you think anyone watched this show because they thought they were gonna get something good, right? Shit, bro, I've watched this garbage more than once, and I can tell you, I can promise you, Esdef's tits are the only reason I kept going. I was just sitting here in my fucking chair, waiting for another scene with Esdef stepping on someone's face and I get to see an angle of her upskirt. The chance that I could see that again was my only motivation. That is what kept me going. I'm gonna make this abundantly clear before we go any further. This show is bad. There are a few redeeming qualities, but for the most part, it's doo-doo, my nigga. The characters are all walking tropes or hypocrite heralds. The fight scenes have legitimately made me fall asleep at certain times. The villains make Hitler look like a really nuanced guy. The show's magic system, aka Relics, are just poorly written and they make shit up along the way. And I am amazed that these niggas had the guts to try a romance subplot when they can't even get the main plot right. Akame Get Killed is the textbook definition of good concept, bad execution, yet surprisingly popular. It's like Tokyo Ghoul or Sword Art Online in that sense. Both of those animes being really easy targets that I don't need to beat down. Well, not more than anyone else has already. Listen man, if you're new to anime or some shit, I guess this show works for you, but if you've watched anime for more than like a week, I promise you this is not the hill you want to die on. I don't want to see any teenagers in my goddamn comments defending this. I promise you, it's indefensible. Let me punch this punching bag. Let me have my fun. This show has a serious problem with its characters. If a character in this show isn't an outright boring piece of shit, they are inconsistent and hypocritical. Not to mention, they have some of the worst fucking backstories I've ever heard. Example A, Tatsumi. Tatsumi is boring. I wasn't expecting much from him. He falls right in line with the typical archetype of a boring self-insert protagonist that we see way too often. Tatsumi is average. Average intelligence, average looking, average ability, average everything. His character is rather simple, he has a strong sense of justice and strongly holds on to his moral convictions, even if it's to a fault. And that's all I have to say. There's no way you'd think this guy is worth more than 5 sentences, right? Or we could look at Shio. Shile. I don't know how to pronounce that, so I'm just gonna say Shio the rest of this video. Thanks. This character fucking blows. So her backstory is that she's fucking retarded and can't do anything right. She meets one person who pretends like she's not a mental midget and then becomes besties from that point forward with her. One day the girl's boyfriend comes over, high off PCP, and decides he wants to kill the chick. Shio decides to kill the dude without a second thought. Then after that incident, his friends come to settle the score and she also just nonchalantly murders all 4 of them with her knife. Am I supposed to care about this character? There is nothing interesting or compelling here. She's really stupid and everyone makes fun of her for it. So? Is this meant to appeal to double-digit IQ viewers like me? Why is she good at killing people? Because she is? Her only friend ran away because she was spooked by the murder. I mean, yeah, what about it? I'd be pretty fucking spooked if my best friend just killed my ex-boyfriend and showed zero emotion on the subject. Maybe I'm just a heartless freak, so be it. But I find Shio to be a boring character with a lackluster story. It's just abundantly clear that she's a useful tool and that no one really cared about making her a good character to begin with. They just wanted someone to kill for the sake of setting up the plot. I'm sorry, that's all she's useful for. Remember how I mentioned Hypocrisy and how a lot of the characters are just fucking hypocrites? Mine is one of my favorite examples. Let's think about this. In many of the episodes in the beginning of this series, we see Mine just treating Tatsumi, the outsider, horribly. It's not enough that she consistently jabs at him, she specifically calls him a hick multiple times. Maybe the sub I'm reading is wrong, but level with me here. Does anyone else find it absurd that Mine bases her reason for evolution entirely in taking down people with these xenophobic attitudes and their hateful rhetoric towards outsiders, only for her to exhibit this exact behavior towards Tatsumi, the outsider? Is this somehow better because she discriminates him for his class rather than his actual race or country of origin? Oh, and I have to mention Run. This man is a very important point. Let me just say that right now. During my research and writing for this scripts and this video, I figured out the anime splits off from the manga, and Run and several other characters suddenly made sense to me. I personally have not read the manga, I actually really want to, and I will do that eventually, but the manga splitting from the anime is the only explanation as to why a character like Run exists in the state that he does. Run talking about how he wants to change the nation from the inside is such a frustrating thing to hear. Run doesn't fucking do anything. We aren't showed Run doing anything to change his nation from the inside, aside from him blindly just doing what his superiors say. Even with no reason to take this empire seriously anymore with revolution in full swing, he still decided to fight Night Raid at the 11th hour for no real discernible reason, while bitching that they started a violent rebellion, as if his job as one of the Jaegers isn't to be a violent lapdog. This dude Run makes Suzaku Kurugi look like a fucking brilliant mastermind. For all the shit I talk about Suzaku, at least he was actually trying to do things to fix the empire from the inside. This dude Run, we were showed nothing on screen of him doing such a thing. Nothing. And it's such a ridiculously stupid, wasted opportunity to see this happen, because Run's idea of destroying it from the inside out, I would have loved to see that explored. But we don't get that. He doesn't do shit. Najenda is also very notable. She's the she's the info dump. That's it. That's her character. Akame, the namesake of the fucking show, isn't even noteworthy. It's amazing to me that I have watched this show multiple times and I can't tell you anything noteworthy about her. She's uninteresting, she's boring. Her relationship with her sister does not inspire anything in me. It is truly hard to give a single solitary fuck. Like you and your sisters were both assassins trained under the Empire? Cool. Akame vs Kurame is an encounter that is given so much weight and importance, but by the time we get to that point, it just falls incredibly flat. It feels like we waited so long for Akame's character arc to end here, and what we got was a whole lot of like, nothing. It's like you've been beating your dick for 20 minutes straight, and just as you're like about to get there and let it all out, a fucking goatsy image flashes on your fucking screen and your dick immediately shrivels up and just goes away. That's what this felt like. Like I just was blue-balled and then I got nothing at the end. Listen, there's a lot of people to talk about in this show, but I cannot be fucked to bother. I honestly picked these characters at random. There was no rhyme or reason. There is no greater point here. Sorry if I didn't talk about your favorite character, but there are so many introduced in this show, and so many do not fucking matter. There were more important characters to talk about, but like I said, I just want to talk about what I felt like talking about more than anything. I have never seen a show with such a careless attitude when it came to the concept of death. Listen, most of these shonen and action anime have the issue of being afraid of killing off characters, or just bringing them back non-stop. I get it. Akame ga Kill reverses this trend, and instead just abuses the concept of death to emotionally manipulate its viewers in a very ineffective and rather crass way. Because That's the fucking gimmick. It's one of the only things the show has going for it, the fact that it actually kills off characters. It leads to so many deaths in the show feeling like utter nonsense. You get the sense that whoever wrote this shit was working backwards. Instead of writing or creating a story leading to someone's death, it feels as if the writer determined who they wanted to kill off and how they wanted it done, and then determined how to reach that goal regardless of how stupid it might end up looking. Shield's death marks the beginning of this unfixable problem in Akame ga Kill. Here's the first issue. We are not given enough time with any of these characters to even feel particularly upset or emotionally rocked by their deaths. Just because you give us a little backstory on the character and then kill them the very same episode doesn't mean we are suddenly attached to them, nor are we sympathetic towards them. You know, I would love to see their character explored somewhat before we just inevitably kill them off. Shield's death in particular is garbage because we got almost nothing of her until literally the episode before she was killed off. You had 5 episodes to make me give a shit about her and you only used 1. Now to be fair, I don't think it was feasible to get Shield's background in while also introducing Tatsumi to Night Raid, at least not with how the show handled it. Imagine if instead of giving Tatsumi different mentors each time, he got Shield from the start and she was the most important person up until her inevitable death. We could have seen some growth and a lot more character interaction between her and Tatsumi, as opposed to this nonsense we get where we just consistently see Tatsumi talk about his dead friends, the same dead friends the dude forgets about after like episode 6 or something. You could have went that route, or you could have just waited a little bit longer to kill her off. But then we get into problem number 2. When the appeal of your show is people dying, you go to ridiculous lengths to make niggas die. Just look at Shield's death. I'm going to explain later in the video why her death is absolute bullshit, timestamp on screen. But do you think this much buffoonery was going to happen if the writer wasn't so dead set on killing Shield off? But they have to kill them off, because that's the fucking appeal of this shit ass show. Shield's death is actually one of the less stupid ways they force characters to die off, but that doesn't mean she doesn't also suffer from the forced death issue. And because I'm petty, let me bring up another hilariously stupid death. Why does Leone just choose to die? Why is this bitch walking around with 5 bullets in her stomach like it's nothing? This is what I mean when I talk about people dying for no reason. Why exactly is mine dead? Did she shoot her gun too hard? Like what? Am I missing something here? Akame ga Kill is flawed at its very core, because what makes it appealing can also be severely detrimental to its story and its characters. But fear not. It is possible for this show to do death scenes correctly. Don't believe me? Let's jump to episode 17. Here we encounter the first meaningful and impactful death in the entire show. This is after the deaths of about 18 different people. And surprisingly enough, it was someone who was an enemy of our protagonist who ended up being the first death worth giving a shit about. The death of Bowles is an example of how to kill a character properly. Bowles is an exception to the standard of most deaths in this anime. Firstly, he's surprisingly one of the most interesting characters in the show. Bowles is a servant of the Empire purely for the sake of his family, which isn't unique reasoning in of itself, but it feels much more convincing when we actually get to see his family visit him. He feels overwhelming guilt for all the arson and murder he's committed, but he is motivated by the need to provide for his wife and child. This is relatable, and it is actually believable. The boomer who wears a mask 24/7 and tortures innocent people alive for the sake of providing for his family is one of the most believable characters in this anime. Let that sink in. It's not like Tatsumi, where the dude legit forgets about his original friends and village after 5 episodes. It's not like Wave, who was also given this family motivation that he consistently talks about, but we as the audience are given no real perspective or info on. Bowles' backstory and character is something that I give a shit about. I'm sad that his chapter ends, and that I don't get to see him push any further on. I don't get to figure out if Bowles would have considered changing his path or digging his heels even further. And that sucks. But that proves they did something good with him. Because I care. To add on, his death doesn't feel forced. To be fair, I think the idea of him escaping that explosion is fucking stupidity of the highest order. But him dying to Chelsea in the fashion that he did was reasonable. It didn't feel forced. Bowles sees a child on the ground with a scraped knee, and he goes to help the child, and the child ends up being Chelsea disguised, and she just stabs him. Even in his death, Bowles was a family man. He saw the child hurt, and he gave a shit. He probably saw his daughter in that girl. There was no more of a fitting way for Bowles to end up dead, and I loved this. I really do wonder why we can't get more shit like this. But then you remember, the entire show is opposed to this type of shit because the show is based off the idea that niggas gotta die, and niggas gotta die a lot. And right after we get arguably the best death scene in the entire show, we get Chelsea's, which triggered me in more ways than one. There was no logical reason for Chelsea to do the dumb shit that she did. It really brings home my complaint of this show making people die for the sake of dying. Ignoring the fact that Chelsea's backstory is mad uninteresting, and I barely remember it after 3 fucking watches of this show. Her death is the biggest crock of shit I have ever seen. If you want to talk about writers forcing bullshit circumstances, this is it. They magically made Chelsea fall in love with Tatsumi in order to make her more motivated and willing to engage in risky/reckless behavior. She just suddenly is crushing on this dude, the episode before the one where she's going to die. Because when you're in love, you just sort of become fucking stupid. Chelsea becomes so stupid that she's willing to confront Kurome alone, not even waiting for the backup, despite knowing that this girl is drugged up more than Lance Armstrong in 2002. She just doesn't consider that her poison needles might not work on Rich Piano over here. This toddler is clearly on the fucking juice, but I guess that doesn't matter to Chelsea because she might be able to impress her future lover Tatsumi. This isn't exactly the intelligence I expected from someone who's allegedly just as experienced as Akame, but whatever. Relics, relics, fucking relics. I don't want to spend too much time on this first point, because it makes me seem like a pedantic asshole, but I find the idea that there are 48 relics that were created 1,000 years ago that cannot be reproduced in the modern era to be absolutely fucking stupid. I understand that's a limitation that is needed in order to keep things exciting and fresh. If too many people had too many relics, it would get boring rather quick and lose uniqueness. But would it have killed you to give an actual reason as to why 1,000 years later no more relics can be produced? It's an obvious limitation that I support, but could you give me a real reason? This is literally magic. You can make up any bullshit, but the show just decides to just go on the reasoning of, "'cause I said so." I'm not asking for much. I haven't even bothered to point how ridiculous the power scaling and balance of these relics can be. Akame wields a one-shot weapon. Surprisingly, this type of bullshit doesn't really ruin relics for me. Not entirely, at least. In fact, I think a lot of relics are super fucking cool. Like Crosstail, that is a sick fucking relic. And those wires give Lubbock some of the most interesting fights in the entire series. However, none of these complaints matter when the show itself has no respect for its fucking magic system. This is shown in both the usage of hidden abilities and its own blatant disregard for rules it sets in place. Want to see this show blatantly violate its own rules? Look no further than Agenda magically bringing Susanoo back to life. This is without a doubt one of the dumbest things I have ever seen. This anime is openly breaking its own rules, and it doesn't really have that many to begin with. I'm going to ignore that we have a bitch who can literally freeze time that caused Susanoo to die to begin with. Hidden abilities are stupid, but we'll get into that. It's the fact that we set out a very clear rule, and then the show is like, don't fucking care. The rule is very easy to understand. If the core is destroyed in a relic, that relic is fucking done. This has been the rule. So when I watch this bitch Esdef literally stomp on Susanoo's core, I'm going to be very annoyed when Agenda suddenly can resurrect Susanoo by dumping her life force into the core. Now, if that wasn't offensive enough on its own, I hope all of you who watched the show remembered the rule concerning Magatama manifestation. Remember the rule that explicitly said the user of the relic will die if they use Magatama manifestation a third time? Why did that rule suddenly get thrown out? Apparently, we later figure out that Nagenda's life has been shortened rather than her being straight up dead. We are facing two distinct possibilities right now. Either A, she has gotten complete plot armor and they changed the rules so instead of her life being taken, her life was just shortened. Or B, this was always the rule and they never explicitly said so. No matter what, this is a crock of shit. It makes no sense that Susanoo gets revived, and it makes no sense that Nagenda is alive afterwards. Another example I can point to is Kinshicho just suddenly evolving during Tatsumi's final fight. I don't think we've seen anything else just randomly evolve unless I'm fucking blind. It would have been really cool during the initial info dump on Relics if someone mentioned that these dumbass things can just evolve. Ah yes, but why do the reasonable thing when we can just avoid explaining key points of the system at play and give ourselves more room? Oh, and don't think I forgot hidden abilities and trump cards. These single-handedly ruin fights in this show. The fights in this show manage to be both lackluster and make no sense. Usually when a fight makes no sense, it makes up for it by being extremely entertaining, but this show cannot even accomplish that half the time. They rely on these hidden abilities for tension and it's horrid. Hidden abilities allow for some god-level ass-pulling that I haven't seen in an anime in a while. These hidden abilities just give the writer so much room to just randomly increase the stakes of a fight or twist said fights into any one direction. You don't have to commit to any rules for a fight if you could just randomly introduce a hidden ability. Seriously, just watching Koro randomly turn into the Incredible Hulk is fucking hilarious. But that isn't even the dumbest thing about the fight. Yeah, the concept of hidden abilities didn't ruin this fight by itself. It's when Shield gets shot by the bitch Seru having a gun come out of her fucking mouth. After getting both her arms chopped off, she shoots Shield in the chest with a gun she made pop out of her fucking throat. But that is not where the bullshit ends. After literally getting chomped in half by Koro, Shield somehow still manages to function and breathe well enough to the point where she can activate a trump card on her relic and save mine by blinding everyone in the area. This is what I mean when I say these hidden abilities are really fucking stupid. They will ruin fight scenes. Not only do these niggas have half their body gone, somehow still functioning and having the strength to activate their relics, we have a bitch with a body enhancement that has guns coming out of her goddamn throat. Hidden abilities that just let you randomly turn the course of a fight at any moment. That type of bullshit alongside relics that can conveniently have great hidden abilities? Yeah, okay bro. Here's an even better example. Let's jump to episode 8. Let's watch magical hidden abilities just randomly turn the course of a fight. It's not enough that Liver randomly decides to become a fucking bloodbender, which by itself isn't the most shocking thing. It's the fact that the blood has poison in it. So I'm just gonna ignore the fact that it's his blood, meaning he's just been circulating poison through his body this whole time? What's nuts is that this is the type of shit they have to do to kill people on this show. This is the lengths they will go. Oh, and not to mention during this fight, another nigga whose hidden ability simply just makes him also the Incredible Hulk. And as if that wasn't bad enough on its own, the plot armor gets so ridiculous that this dude just sits around and tells our protagonist, "I'm gonna let you transform because I'm confident you gonna fail." That is the most anime bullshit I have ever seen in my life. Purposely letting your enemy power up because reasons. This is a common theme in this show, where people legitimately only win fights or power up to absurd degrees because the opposition fucking lets them do it. This can be used sometimes and not look like terrible writing, but this is an instance in which it just baffles my mind. You have been on the back foot this entire fight, 2 of your team members died, and you had to activate your hidden ability, yet at this point, where you could probably split Tatsumi wide open like Lana Rhodes on a Friday night, you decide, let him try out his new relic. When I originally wrote this, I had relics and fighting as 2 separate sections to deal with, but as I was writing, I came to realize both these issues are so fucking intertwined, I have to mash them together. The reason relics are bad is because of the fighting, and the reason the fighting is bad is because of the relics. It's a disgusting incestuous relationship where they just keep fucking each other. Both of these concepts are ruining each other, but they also need each other. Let's look at the ogre episode. Am I supposed to believe that you needed both Leone and Akame to kill this one dude who basically didn't even put up a fight, but we left the actual threat, ogre, up to the newbie Tatsumi? Starting to see why this is such a dangerous job. Common sense just isn't common. Also, am I meant to seriously believe that this ogre motherfucker that notoriously moves around carefully and never likes to be alone just willingly came to this abandoned alleyway alone after some suspicious kid in a hood covering his face specifically told ogre to meet up with him alone? This show is lazy. This show wanted Tatsumi to have a 1v1 with ogre no matter what, and in all its laziness gave us the dumbest reasons and forced that setup to happen. Personally, I'm perfectly fine with a one-on-one. It's exciting, especially for Tatsumi's first real job, but when you bend the situation to reach this objective and you don't go about it in a clever way, it just looks like bullshit. This particular fight encompasses a theme you will see throughout AGK, and it's the poorly choreographed fight scenes. It seems that within all the music and talk no jutsu going on during these fights, it can be easy to miss out on some of the really lazy and stupid shit that goes on. I find the scene where Tatsumi slices off both of Ogre's arms through the power of nothing except his emotions to be hilariously stupid. They were both in neutral position and Tatsumi just somehow destroys Ogre because he felt like it, I guess. I don't fucking know what this bullshit is. Also, an example that's really dear to my heart is an episode where Dr. Stylish just suddenly pulls out this hidden ability where he can poison the entire area, but he just happened to coincidentally give all his men the antidote. Okay. I've done a lot to tear this show down in terms of its fights, but I always give credit where credit is due. So let's look at a fight that's actually done really well. Let's examine Lubbock's fight against two of the Rakshasa demons, Mez and Sten. This fight goes against the grain and has none of the bullshit that drives me insane about this show. First off, Lubbock's secret technique doesn't ruin the fight. I may not care for these trump cards, but the way it's presented in this fight isn't in a jarring fashion as to make me not take the fight serious. To add on, it doesn't outright win him the fight or sway the fight in a ridiculous manner. It's some of the most tasteful execution of the trump card I've ever seen in this anime. It feels like Lubbock actually outsmarted his opponents rather than simply getting an abundance of plot armor. To add on, Mez and Sten make up for one of the most enjoyable fights because they don't have these nonsense relics. Admittedly, the body manipulation shit is slightly ridiculous, but we've already seen the Capital regularly hands out super soldier serum that turns people into freakazoids, so the Rakshasa demons being able to manipulate their bodies to this degree is not unbelievable. It's ridiculous, but nothing out of the range for this show. What makes this fight so good is that it's grounded in reality and it doesn't feel like anything here is forced. Just look how Mez dies. Mez getting stabbed in the back by two knives with wires attached makes sense. And this doesn't feel like some bullshit because at the very beginning of the encounter, Lubbock actually threw a knife. It's crazy how just a little bit of foreshadowing goes a long way. When you actually hint at something beforehand, it doesn't feel like some shit you made up. And to be quite frank, even if this was something that did come out of nowhere, it's just so much easier to believe as opposed to a bitch with a gun coming out of her fucking throat. That particular instance was unbelievable even with the foreshadowing that they did do with Ogre mentioning body modifications to Syura. There's also this one last thing about this fight that makes me want to actually talk about it in a positive manner, because it doesn't just not do stupid shit, it does something I like a lot. And it conveys the personality of Lubbock both verbally and visually in a very fantastic manner. If you only watch this fight and no other part of the show, you'd know so much about this guy. Seriously. The way he plays dead and restricts his own heart in order to escape a fight he's not confident he can win tells us that he's not the most overly confident in his ability to take fights with those physically stronger than him. And then when he sees an innocent person about to die, he decides to purposely risk his life distracting to opponents he believed he was outmatched by. This shows the audience that despite his normally sheepish attitude and very careful tactics and planning, he still feels a sense of justice, that he would even go as far to do what he just did. The way in which he consistently finds innovative ways to use his relic both defensively and offensively over the course of this fight conveys Lubbock's intelligence and personality in waves. And it's going to be a minor point, but even some of the dialogue choices he makes are perfect. The way he makes sure to comment on Mez's looks and the idea of romancing her while he's about to possibly die, that tells you the type of person this guy is. He's a calculated and extremely talented assassin, but he's still a little bit of a fucking goofball at heart. Look at his fucking smirk as he's aware that he's about to stab the girl. It's amazing how much they got out of this one fight. Just imagine if more fights were of this quality. Dr. Stylish embodies one of the biggest issues with the villains in the series. Villains in this show seem to fall into a binary. Let's talk about the first part of that binary. This group of villains falls under the Monster of the Week category, random bodies for the heroes to senselessly beat into. This isn't the worst thing in the world, even if it's an overdone trope. JoJo's Part 3 employs this dumb shit. Yes, Stardust Crusaders is one of my least favorite JoJo's parts, but the way this trope is implemented in that show is far more entertaining than in this show. Those villains are actually memorable. The DRB brothers, Steely Dan, whole motherfucking horse. There was a nigga whose stand was the fucking sun. Yeah, I know it wasn't the real sun, and the actual dude who controlled it wasn't memorable, but that's not my fucking point. The point is simple. That type of shit is way more fucking notable than a dude like Dr. Stylish. And if you want to put a little bit of irony into this, Dr. Stylish's fucking minions are over here doing JoJo's poses at multiple points. So whoever wrote this shit clearly knows what's up. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like Stardust Crusaders or any JoJo is the pinnacle of writing and consistency, but I will tell you, when it uses this Monster of the Week trope, it manages to be something noteworthy. Not all the time, but at least some of the time. Meanwhile in this show, almost every single villain that falls under this archetype is wholly uninteresting and is fucking boring. What is even special about Dr. Stylish? He's a gay scientist? His fucking motives are the stereotypical, I'm a mad scientist who has no regard for ethics? Whoop-de fucking do. The second half of this binary are what I call the primary antagonists. I'm being a bit loose with my usage of the word antagonist, but stick with me here. When a villain in this show isn't straight up cannon fodder that we won't see again, they are villains with multi-episode appearances who are meant to be taken serious. The problem is, on this specific front, all of these people fail. They are all designed to be so ridiculously evil that it makes it hard to take this serious at all. They are all made to be terrible to an absurd degree. They're given one mode. Syura is a mentally ill rag that rambles about justice nonstop. Esdev is a hypocritical authoritarian hellhound who kills niggas for sport and has fun torturing people. Prime Minister Honest is portrayed as a greedy fat ass who does nothing but manipulate literally everyone around him, even his own son, who he barely gave a shit about seeing die. The actual king here is a fucking dunce who blindly listens to Honest, even while Honest tells him to slaughter millions of people. Any important villain in this show that isn't the Monster of the Week is just a fucking cartoonishly evil bitch. Zero nuance whatsoever. We don't have to question the fact that we are supporting a group of literal assassins when you can just make the group they're opposing insanely corrupt. Let's look at one of the few attempts to actually make our villains not look like one-sided garbage. Go to episode 12. You want to sympathize with Syura's twisted sense of justice because her parents and two extremely fucked up mentors died? Or are you trying to show us a more human side of the mass murderer Esdev? Esdev's entire philosophy is the strong should fear the weak. It isn't real though. I'm entirely convinced it's just used to explain our sociopathic views and tendencies to engage in slaughter and torture of innocent people. This show wants to have its cake and eat it too. Esdev claims to be all about strong-willing over the weak, literally stepping her heels into those who she perceives as lesser. Yet she continues to serve an empire that is clearly not stronger than her. When you really consider things, she has no reason or motive to be a general in the empire after a certain point. It became abundantly clear by the end of the show that she was the strongest bitch around, and she had absolutely no reason to submit to the orders of a nation who even she recognized as incompetent. She has decided to specifically limit her view of the strong should rule the weak as an excuse to kill people indiscriminately. She says very often how she has no pity for those weaker than her, but here we have a scene with her comforting Syura and feelings Syura has over people dying. And here's the thing, I understand the purpose of this is that Esda simply wants to manipulate her soldiers into being even more loyal to her. But I really wonder how necessary it is for her to do any of this. Doesn't this look weird and unnecessary considering who she is? I never thought I'd watch a series and actually complain that there's too much blood in it, but there's a first for everything, I guess. Some may see it as a nitpick, but it's a genuine issue for me while watching this show. Blood and gore by themselves are not effective. You can't just use it however you like and expect it to produce consistent emotional response. There needs to be a specificity to how you use it. If you decide to never use it, I can respect that decision. But when you choose to show someone bleeding, it shouldn't be like in this show where every single person who is stabbed or shot immediately turns into a fucking geyser. It just loses its charm after a while and becomes a whatever thing. You know, if you want to see an effective use of blood, look no further than the video game Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. Minor spoilers for the next couple seconds, feel free to skip ahead to the timestamp. In Nocturne, this is a game in which you are fighting demons, angels, gods, and all sorts of insane shit. If there was ever an opportunity to use blood for effect, it would be in this game. However, there is only one major instance of blood being used, and it's during the massacre of the mannequins.
Nice to hear. What the fuck is going on? What the fuck? It's Sakahagi. Holy shit.
These mannequins are the most peaceful entities you will encounter in this hellscape of a game. So to see their dead bodies on the ground, blood splattered all over, all while ominous music plays in the background, it's disturbing. It actually has an effect on you. I know I just compared anime to a video game, but the principle stands. Blood and gore by itself is not enough. Blood and gore are not a shortcut to dark themes or substance, and that is a major thing Akame ga Kill fails to understand. The shock value that they intend to push on audiences just wears off after a couple episodes. This anime desperately wants to come off as something dark and mature at certain points, and it's under the impression that rampant blood use is the shortcut to it. Tatsumi and Mine's little love thing they got going on here is just so stupid. I know mine is just an airhead tsundere, but what does it that fucking matter if the romance is garbage? For an overwhelming majority of the show's runtime, she just openly shits on Tatsumi. And then suddenly here in episode 19, she's in love with him. This relationship was never at the forefront of importance whoever wrote this shit. Because after spending so many episodes putting zero progress into it, I'm supposed to suddenly believe this? Do you seriously think progressing Mine's feelings for Tatsumi is as simple as one episode where a random nigga tells both of them, "Oh wow, you're showing love," and then the next episode she poof wants his dick in her mouth? The tsundere shit is a lot more bearable if it's clear from the onset that the girl actually likes the dude, or if we get natural progression and see the development of feelings over time. But we never really got that with Mine. It just fucking happened and that was that. And I've been harping on Mine. I almost forgot about Tatsumi's part in this because Tatsumi's just a fucking blank, uninteresting slate, so I forgot to mention him. But he doesn't show any feelings at any point. It's not until Mine shows feelings that he shows feelings. This show dedicated no real time to this dynamic and then rushed it. If one person defends this garbage by saying tsundere, I will personally come to your house, peel your toenails backwards, and force feed them to you. This is a very short section, but I saw it necessary to comment on this. I do not like the blatant shoehorning of romance in so you could check another box and impress viewers. And here's some random shit that bothered me. Not anything relevant to warrant its own section, but just shit I was annoyed by. He can set up teleports in the fucking air. Not getting into how this is fucking stupid. Lubbock slices off Syura's one hand but decides to not slice off the other, because why take some precaution in a life or death scenario and eliminate the only other chance Syura stays in the fight? Syura slices this lady's neck open and she manages to muster the strength to get back up and stab Lubbock. I might be able to believe an experienced fighter doing this, but this lady, no. Syura has a hidden ability that sends you to Final Destination. Because reasons. When Syura dies, they are both teleported from the sky despite them both starting off on the ground. Lubbock runs out of wire on his way down despite never having had this problem before, but guess you can get away with this type of nonsense writing when you purposely don't explain limitations such as how Lub gets new wire or if it's a limited supply. In honor of the spectacular writing of the AGK staff, I will be presenting to you the pumpkin counter. Remember kids, you must announce exactly how your weapon works every single time. Why would I say something useful or sort of entertaining when I could just do the same shit over again and fill in dead time because I'm a very uninteresting character.
パンプキン精神エネルギーを衝撃波として打ち出す銃のテーグ使用者がピンチになるほどその破壊力は増していく
ピンチが薄くなった分威力が弱いかピンチの時ほど私は強い能力を甘く見たわねパンプキンにそんなの必要ないわピンチの時ほど強いのが撃てる私のパンプキンはねピンチになるほど強い力を発揮するんだからパンプキンは精神エネルギーで撃ってるのよ感情の高ぶりが私を強くするプキンはピンチになればなるほどその力を発揮するのよあんたは知らないかもしれないけどあんたは知らないかもしれないけどあんたは知らないかもしれないけど
Shut up, bitch! 陛下は大臣に騙されておりますどうか民の声に耳をお傾けください
おい大臣あんなことを言っておるぞ
気が触れたのね
Yes, because he'd just tell you the truth, right?
いわゆる正義の殺し屋ってやつじゃねえかなんだよ何がおかしいんだよ辰巳どんなにお題目をつけようがやってることは殺しなんだよ
そこに正義なんてあるわけがないですよ
ここにいる全員いつ報いを受けて死んでもおかしくないんだぜ
I just find this scene to be particularly hypocritical. I understand that the reason they put this scene in was to set up expectations. Seeing these people openly admit they are murderers is actually good. When I first watched the show, this little scene made me excited. It made me think that there would be questions on morality on what they were doing, and it wouldn't simply be a black and white thing. What did I actually end up getting? A show that consistently did the black and white nonsense I hoped they wouldn't do, portraying Night Raid as a group of virtuous good guys. There is probably no situation in this show where Night Raid isn't presented as correct, and that's because everyone they oppose is just made cartoonishly evil or greedy. To the point where you can't even take the enemy seriously. You can't even consider their side for a second. What's the point in adding the scene and setting up expectations like this, only to continue to portray them as the group of assassins who are the morally superior figures?
破壊する
おいまさか
キラークイーン第3の爆弾バイツァーダスト
What the fuck?
You telling me that the shield blocked out a fucking explosion of that caliber? And the man who set up the explosion is walking away unscathed when he was at the center of it? Who is writing this shit? Why does every fight disobey the rules of reality and the show?
ところであなたはどうされますかもう長くはないのでしょう
お前黒目の体のこと
I wonder how he could know that, I really do.
黒目黒目さん黒目黒目さん黒目黒目さんおい黒目黒目さん黒目
ただそばにいればそれでいい
なんであんたはそんなにも俺を
Good question. You see, if I was a good YouTuber, this is the part where I put a long outro and give you my final assessment of the show. But I've decided I'm going to put the same effort in this video that the creators of this anime put in.